and it's their intrinsic
nature. This food basically robs
sound feasible, sound like
Now, where I left off in part 2, we was getting into the whole reptilian thing. Who the reptilians are, who are these people who the Jews portray to be. They are rulers, they are monarchs, but who are they really? And I left off getting into the whole reptilian thing and talking about dragons and all the mythology of dragons and everything else. There is so much more to this that you must understand in order for us to go further. So we're going to get into this a lot because it boggles your mind when you start to think about this whole story of dinosaurs. I mean, what really happened? How are people, recently talking about seeing dinosaurs and encountering dragons and stuff like that? Why are they so worshipped more than anything else? The dragons and all this dragon culture and mythology is everywhere. So we're going to get into that here. So now let's get right into this whole thing. I have a lot of information. Now, the thing is, I really want you to think it's dinosaurs. I really want you to think about dinosaurs and everything that entails. All the information that we have gotten over the years about dinosaurs. Really get into that. Now, understand, it wasn't until 1824 that we get the word reptile. It wasn't until 1842 that Richard Owens gives us the name dinosaur. So we're talking about 1842, fairly recent in history, that we finally get the name dinosaur. Think about that. Now, dinosaur means great lizard. So 1763 is when the first official writings of what we call today dinosaur was recorded. 1763. So when they recorded these writings, they wasn't even calling it dinosaur then because the name didn't come until much later. So when you look at all the ancient stories and depictions about dragons and all these stories about dragons, when you look at all this stuff, before the 1800s, when you look at the pictures and the depictions, these dragons look like dinosaurs in most of the accounts. Now, the thing is, before they was called dinosaurs by, Richard Owen and everybody else, they called them dragons. So think about this. This changes everything. When you understand that before dinosaurs was called dinosaurs, they called them dragons. So think about the mythology. So we're going to say that dinosaurs are real and actually existed, and they called them dragons. And then we find all of this mythology and all these stories and tales about dragons. When you have the Chinese put the dragon on the zodiac, everything else on that Chinese zodiac, as I showed, is real. And we are to believe that the dragon is mythological. And you have all these prominent people writing about dragons and seeing these things. When you finally understand that they called them dragons before dinosaurs, everything changes. So you have to think about it. Think about the Bible. What did the Bible call Satan? Called him the dragon, the beast, the dragon. So think about it. Then curator of vertebrate fossils at the National Museum of Canada in Ottawa conjectured a possible evolutionary path for Troodon if it not had perished in a catatonic extinction over 65 million years ago, suggesting that it could have evolved into intelligent beings similar in body plan to humans. And this is where it starts to get a little bit weird. This is where we get into parts of the Bible that most people had no clue about. So now, how many of you actually understood that God had a council? That he had a divine council, like the Jedi council, meaning like, God sitting down and we got people around him, like a council. How many people actually knew that he had a council who advised them and he, gave jobs and asked them to do stuff? How many people knew that? This is one of the things that people have no clue of when I talk about the Bible and I ask them about the God of Israel. So many people talk about the God of Israel, the God of Jacob, they have no clue that these are not the same gods. And we're going to get into that in this Bible. You got to understand that, yes, your Bible speaks of many gods. And God, the God, was the leader of them all. God had a council with him leading a bunch of other gods. The Bible talks about it. So we're going to read 1 Kings 22, 19 through 24. And I'm going to start here. It says, I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing beside him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who will entice Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said one thing, and another said another. Then a spirit came forward and stood before the Lord, saying, I will entice him. And the Lord said to him, by what means? And he said, I will go out and will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you are to entice him, and you shall succeed. Go out and do so. Now, therefore, behold, the Lord has put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these your prophets, and the Lord has declared disaster for you. So now when you read this is not the only verse. There are more verses that goes on where it's talking about God and his counsel. Psalms 89:7 says, a God greatly to be feared in the counsel of the holy ones, and awesome above all who are around him. 1 Chronicles 16:25 says, for great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and he is to be feared above all gods, implying that there are more than one God. So when you get into this whole thing, it's so many verses that's actually talking about God and his counsel, and that these are beings. You might as well call them Elohim. These are different gods who have different jobs, and we're going to get into that. Now, remember in the book of Enoch, you have the Watchers. Now, remember, the Watchers had jobs, one of which was to watch, to watch Earth. These Elohim, or these members of the divine council, also have positions. They also have jobs. Now you have the cherubim and the seraphim, who are both guardians of the throne of God. Now when you read Isaiah 6:1-2, it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. But the cherubim you basically find in Mesopotamia, and the seraphim you find in Egypt. So now this is the seraphim. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it has 6 wings. It is a serpent or a dragon with 6 wings, like the Bible speaks of. So now when you look at depictions of the seraphim, you see that they are dragons or serpents. You see 6 wings. So you have basically like a flying serpent. So you have flying serpents with 6 wings, or flying serpents guarding the throne of God. So now when we go to Kemet, because as I said, the seraphim are Egyptian, more Egyptian, you always find depictions of them, and they always are associated with Egypt. So when you go to Egypt and you look at Akhenaten's throne, or Tutankhamun's, King Tut's throne, you can see the flying serpent on the throne. Take a look. You can see it on the back as well. You have flying serpents. As I said, there are many mentions of serpents or flying serpents in the Bible. When you read Isaiah 14:26-29, it's talking about just that. It says, this is the purpose that is purposed upon the whole earth, and this is the hand that is stretched out upon all the nations. For the Lord of hosts has purposed, and who shall disannul it? And his hand is stretched out, and who shall turn it back? In the year that King Ahaz died was this burden. Rejoice not thou, whole Palestina, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, that his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. So this is a cockatrice. Take a look. It is like a dragon mixed with like a bird, as you can see. So what do they have on the W Rhea? You have a bird, you have a serpent. You got to understand and start putting this stuff together because it's trying to tell you something. One of the weird things is when you look at the evolution that they give us of the dinosaur. That's something that I wanted to get into a little bit if I had time. But you can see that one of the explanations they give for the dinosaurs is that they evolved into birds. That, you know, most of the major dinosaurs died out and others evolved into something else. That's one of the things that I want to tell us what the something else is, but I went into that a little bit in part 2. But the other thing is that most of these reptilians or dinosaurs evolved into birds, you know, birds that we still see today.